Thanks for joining us tonight. This is WPL's Jazz Series, and tonight I have the absolute pleasure and honor of being able to have a nice conversation with Melissa Walker, who is an incredible vocalist, the founder and president of Jazz House Kids, and it wears many, many hats, which I will get to in a second. So welcome, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.
This is incredible. I spent a lot of time going down a rabbit hole to just find out as much information as I possibly could, and I'm amazed that at your very young age you've accomplished as much as you have. So I'm going to do my best to touch on as much as we can, and we're just going to have a great time tonight. So of these many hats that I always refer to when I do my interviews is you're a vocalist, you are a pianist as well, a producer, an educator extraordinaire, which we're going to get into great detail, a creator, a businesswoman, also extraordinaire, and a visionary leader. And I think that that's absolutely amazing that you've done all that. And I don't know if I've missed any, and I'm sure I probably have. So one thing I found very interesting is that you are also from Canada, the land of Oscar Peterson, and
Right.
discovered the Rini Rosses was from there. So tell us a little bit about your growing up there and your musical influences at the time before you came to New York.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not a pianist, but I was a bassoonist in my early years in junior high and high school, and probably not very good at double reeds, but I think that was a part of my early love for music and band and being in a musical community. Living in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I'll just give us a sense of that, is 400 miles of the US border. Most of Canadians live within 200 miles, like Calgary and Vancouver and Toronto. So, living up in Edmonton meant that it's a pretty cold country. And it's long seasons of winter, needless to say. And so, once you spend a lot of time outside, as my family did, you come inside, and music is, one of the pastimes. I come from a really musical family. I love, Patty, kind of like your family, just really a real appreciation for all things music, musicians, how it makes you feel, how it brings you together with your family, your friends, and your community. And so my parents just loved soul music and loved jazz. And so my house was just filled with music. So it was natural that I would be singing at a really young age. And I have two sisters, and together we made our own little Supremes, or some trio, and everybody played an instrument. You played an instrument in my house. My sister played piano, I played the bassoon, and my other sister played the flute, and that was just the way it went. And I think the love for that came from my family, and then going into a program where you could be with like-minded peers and play and experience just the joy of music. But my connection to jazz, was not something that I had access to really when I was a youngster. We didn't have a jazz program. We didn't have a jazz house. But one day I was watching the movie Lady Sings the Blues, and I kind of hate to admit that that's actually how I really began to go down that path in a more serious way. And of course, that was Diana Ross and Billy D. Williams. And I was first introduced to Lady Day and her music. And I was already singing. I was doing classical. I was singing kind of popular music in school. And one day I came across this songbook of Billie Holiday. And that really kind of just changed my life, because it opened this door for singers like Dinah Washington and Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan. And I'd never heard that music before. And I loved how expressive it was. It was unlike anything that I'd heard up to that time. And then I kind of went down that path.
Would you say that Billie Holiday is one of your influences?
Yeah, I think, I mean, she really was the first voice that I had to take pause and note because I had never heard a voice that was expressive like that. And all of the great popular music that I was listening to and the great soul music that I was listening to, I just never heard what I heard was this human cry, this human voice that was so expressive. And of course, you know, the film, you know, gave me a glimpse into aspects of her life, and later we found out it missed a lot of other parts that really needed to be told. But she absolutely, you know, I just think singers and musicians of that time, the journey that they had to to go and the lengths and what they had to endure, who really were our Beethovens and our Bachs and our, you know, our geniuses of our time in this country, and for them to be invisible and in the way, in the manner, and to be treated in the manner that they were. Yet to bring forth this music that now is really a symbol of freedom around the world, right? But she certainly is on my list. If I were on a desert island, there would be Billie Holiday would be right with me.
You know, it's interesting because I was listening to a YouTube clip of you singing "How Insensitive," and I hear so much of, I see hear a lot of Billie Holiday in your voice, and it was, you have such an incredible way of interpretation and phrasing. And I just want to share from the Kennedy Center's article that I found a description of your singing that does it much better than I could ever hope to try to describe. This artist has the ability to consolidate the many aspects of jazz singing, blues sensibility, lyric interpretation, rhythmic phrasing, and improvisation into an artistic expression that is both timely and timeless. And I wholeheartedly agree. I so very much enjoyed listening to your music, and How Insensitive was, it's just a beautiful rendition that you did there. And if everybody run out after this to YouTube and look that one up. I understand that Carmen McRae is also one of your influences.
You know, Carmen really is, you know, is in the tributary of Billie Holiday, right? I mean, she is born of that singer as well. And really what we're talking about are singers that are really taking care of the lyric, where that is at the center and the core. And to me, I love Carmen. Um, you know, she could just speak a phrase and you feel it. And then when she would put her really sophisticated harmony behind it and her sense of rhythm, you know, it's, you know, you just sit and listen to that whole Thelonious Monk record that she did, or you can listen to her live. And when she uses words like run or love, or, or, you know, a line that might say, a twist on a phrase, and she'll put humor in that phrase. And, I think there's a lot of singers along that, right? That's also where Abby Lincoln is in that line as well. These singers where really that storytelling is at the heart of it. And I think that's, Frank Sinatra, in terms of, if you want to learn a lyric in a song, listen to Frank Sinatra, and so Shirley Horn, I mean, she can bring you to the knees, and, just when she sings a beautiful ballad. And so that's really kind of the roots from which I stand. And, I sit on their shoulders, and I just try to tell my story through all this great music that is around us.
It is amazing to know the history before and such an important part of that. I'm just curious how you learned your phrasing. Your phrasing is so wonderfully it's unique to you, but I can also hear so many of the singers before you in you. But I was looking again and found several different versions of you singing "Just in Time," and which is one of my favorite songs, by the way, and by one of my favorite composers, Julie Stein. And the it's amazing that each version that I came across, you sing it differently and wonderfully, and your phrasing is unique each time. And how do you do that? How does one get to that point, and how?
You know, I think our great masters of this music just really thoroughly knew and know each piece of music. And I think when you can kind of crawl in that music and understand its kind of harmonic structure and where it's going, and really that story, I love that. I love that story, just in time, I found you just in time, and I think so many of us can relate to that, right? When you find that person. I was lost, and the losing dice were tossed. And, I just think that we all can relate to that song. And then it's also that great song. You can sing it as a ballad. It can be medium tempo. You can pick it up. It's such a great swinger. Inherent in that song is just a great sense of rhythm. So I do that. I love doing that a lot with my husband, just as a duo. We have a lot of fun together, and and exploring just the nuance of it. And again, I think you just have fun with the message, and each time you sing it, you explore it. It doesn't matter how many times you do it, still each time you do it, it's a new day, it's a new feeling, it's a new audience. It's fresh in some way that it reveals itself new again. And I think that's why, right? Because it is not, jazz isn't something that we're trying to replicate from one day to the next. That's not where its inherent beauty is, as it might be from other genres of music. Its inherent beauty is taking the moment and making something out of that piece of music. And so when you come from that place, because jazz gives you that license to do that, it does allow you to feel anew in it, because you are not trying to replicate something from before. And I just, again, I think that, it changed my lonely day, that lovely day, and I just think that particularly.
That's your dog, yes?
That's my dog.
I think he made an appearance in the interview with your husband. So let me just add here, since we haven't said his name yet, Melissa Walker is married to Christian McBride, the bassist, who I had the great honor and fortune of interviewing last September. And so there's her shirt dog.
And guess what? The dog's name is Ella, for Ella Fitzgerald, and she's just ringing up a storm over here. So, but again, thank you. Yeah, that's one of the fun pieces, and but I also like singing something like Cole Porter and singing Miss Otis Regrets, and kind of getting into that song, right? That really tragic song of Miss Otis Regrets, and invading that space and trying to tell that story.
That's very well said. And so I had found a quote from you that I had added onto my flyer, and it's worth mentioning here, is what you have said about songs. And you have said, I think of songs as stories. They represent and convey our universal expectations about love, joy, longing, loss, regret, roads taken and not taken. Songs capture the essence of our spirits and help define our spiritual life. They are celebrations of what we've done and who we are. They are my gifts to the people around the world who have heard and supported me, who love jazz, who hold dear the art of the song. So I'm going to need to add in that you're an incredible writer, and if that was just something you came up extemporaneously, wow. It's so well conceived in that thought, and thank you for saying that. One of the things I wanted to mention is with Just in Time, in one of those clips that I had seen, is it was you had said it was something that symbolizes how you and Christian basically got together in a way, right?
That's true. He absolutely we found each other, I think, just in time. It took 10 years. Our paths would cross here and there performing. I always think of it as he was on the big stage, I was on the small side stage. He maybe was traveling first class, I was going economy. We would just kind of pass and might see each other at a club here and there. At the Mount Hood Jazz Festival, or one of our places. I think our first occasion though, where we were performing kind of together in a way, was in Philadelphia, and it was one of the cruises that would go around the city. And he was on one stage for some time, and I would be on another stage with my band. And of course, he was just everywhere, omnipresent, even as a young man, as what they were calling the Young Lions. But it took a long time. And, that also sometimes, what made it take 10 years, and some of the things that, the intervening years. And, I think things happen in their time. And I guess that's why I love that song. But, it's kind of one of those songs that just tells our story. And when we kind of finally got together, 10 years later, that song just seemed to make sense, that while it took 10 years, it's still just on time. It's right on time.
I'm absolutely convinced that there's a clone or 15 clones of Christian, and probably 20 of you, for all that you guys have able to accomplish. When I look at your tour schedules and all that you're doing, I'm thinking there can't just be one of each one.
That's right.
And I don't know how you ever see each other, which is the other thing. So.
I think that's, many artists kind of have talked about that, of being, virtually home for virtually, that's an interesting word to use, but for the better part of 2 years or so. I remember at some point we were like, well, I guess we get along, even though we've now been married almost 17 years, there was still this sense we've never spent this much time together. And I think we learned that, we actually get along, and we don't have to be running in opposite directions or a million miles an hour. And so we had a, I don't want to say we had a lot of fun, because it was a really hard time for everyone with so much going around us, but it certainly also made us realize that slowing down and having some together time, and just perhaps how that too needs to be a part of our lives in a way, is that moment of suspension, and so we kind of learned a lot about each other and our dogs, and yeah.
So one of the things I like to ask is the responsibilities, if you will, that each musician brings in a different setting, whether it's a duo, a trio, quartet, quintet, and such. So if we could just start this, of course, as a duo, with you performing with Christian, who is accompanying you only on bass, which is unbelievable. It's just fantastic. There's such an intimacy, and in that sound that the two of you bring together, your voice, his bass. But what I love most in watching you guys perform together is the fact that you can see that unspoken communication. You guys are having a whole tacit conversation going on there, and you can see it, I think that's an amazing thing in watching you perform with him. And I just was wondering if you feel that when you perform, and do you feel with any other musicians? And we won't tell Christian if you do.
So much of life really happens on the bandstand, and being on the bandstand with Christian is kind of like being with him in life, in terms of having a lot of trust, a lot of fun. I love his playing. I love listening to him, and he's just such a capable musician, obviously. But he puts so much humor and life into his playing, and this driving force that he is. And so, you know, a number of years ago, I had the real honor of going out on the road with Ray Brown for his 75th birthday, and I went out on tour. It was Hank Jones and Ray Brown and a lot of tremendous artists were on that tour. And I remember I had not met him, but we were in Lyon, and he was playing at this beautiful amphitheater. And I was coming from the airport and walking to the stage, and all I could do was feel this man's music, right? And Christian is absolutely walking in those steps, right, in terms of this sound, this feel. And you know, people can tell Christian's playing by just listening to that feel of his, right? And obviously there's things like phrasing, etc., but that feel and sound. So being on the stage with him is wonderful. But I've got to say, there's been so many musicians, and the bass really is my, kind of favorite instrument. And I think, that's what I kind of sing off of, right? Because I sing off of the foundation of that music, which really is happening through the bass. So getting a bass player who plays some really good lines is really important and has really great feel. And you can never go wrong with Christian. But I got to tell you, I've got to also say that I've worked with a number of really tremendous bassists and musicians, and it's just a joy. And again, I think that the bandstand is just a microcosm of the world we live in, right? And kind of negotiating and giving space and kind of going in the forefront and going in the background, and we're not all going to sound the same and approach it the same, and all of that kind of happens. All of that happens on the bandstand through this music. So that's kind of how I think about it. And I just think about life through the lens of music when I go about my day, and some of the issues that might come up or what I might be trying to convey. I just go right back to the bandstand, and the lessons are really clear, and the wisdom is really right there, because that's what it's like on the bandstand every day, is negotiating through a different set of circumstances.
That's a great way of putting that. And I am reminded of a version of Mr. Bojangles that you apparently had requested an arrangement of for Christian's Bring It On CD, which you were the vocalist on, with the band, with the big band. And growing up in the 70s, Mr. Bojangles was on WPAT, and it was just way overplayed, and it just is everywhere. You couldn't go into a restaurant or a mall,
right.
It was just everywhere. And I liked the song, but again, there was a part of me that was like, oh, Mr. Bojangles again. Your version on that album is absolutely stellar, and it's a totally different song and a totally different presentation. You do it as a ballad. It's rich, it's full, it's like velvet, and I'm so glad that you asked for that arrangement, because it brought that song to a different level that I don't think most people have been able to understand and hear. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was first arranged by my musical director for many of my records, Clarence Penn, a drummer, an incredible musician, artist, and arranger. And I asked him to do a series of arrangements over the years, and that was one of them. And so we put it in a trio, and then, and it dances, right? It dances, and then I asked Christian if he would arrange it for a big band, and he managed to make it dance with a big band. And so, that's another great story, but you're right. Can we tell stories? It's kind of like Misty, right? Do you call Misty today, in terms of a song that we've heard? But when an artist can then take it and bring something new to it, it does, kind of allow us to remember that it is a great song,
Right.
and hopefully you heard a different story come out of that song.
It's funny, my sister and I were talking recently and listening to Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which was not, the soundtrack was not as well received by the public. It did get award nominations and it's an incredible soundtrack, but that song in itself is such a beautiful one. That and Candyman, of course, which we've also heard a lot growing up. But Monty Alexander does an incredible version of Pure Imagination, and I think that's a song too, much like Mr. Bojangles, where you can revisit these wonderful songs from musicals and give them a big band treatment or give them a trio treatment and just have them shine in a way that they never did. So I'm going to ask you to do Pure Imagination, please, on your next CD.
That is a beautiful piece. That is totally a beautiful. We actually do that with a lot of our young people when we do a vocal program. That's a gorgeous song. And I think that, I mean, sometimes you might not, do a song because it's just been done by an artist. You're like, okay, done, you got it, and sometimes you're bold. That's kind of like, do you really want to pick up Marvin Gaye's What's Going On? It's like, and I've heard some artists of recent do that piece, and I'm like, you got to, hand it to you. And then they bring something new to it, but, sometimes you leave it right with the main interpreter. But Pure Imagination, that'll never grow old. That is a great lyric and a beautiful melody.
One of the things I was also enraptured by is if your scat singing, which of course brings Ella Fitzgerald to mind too. Is that something that you are comfortable doing often? And do
you are being totally, now we're telling tales of Wales here. I will not consider myself a scat singer, and those Ella Fitzgerald, young singers like Jasmine Horn, so many young singers can just scat for days. That is difficult for me. It's not difficult for me to improvise through a lyric. It is difficult for me to improvise through syllables or sounds in that manner. But there's so many great artists that I listen to that I love who can really scat. I do it very judiciously because I don't feel that's really where I shine. And I think that I'm going to leave that to the practitioners of scat. And maybe that's also, now, Carmen McRae could really scat. She only would scat very seldom, but when she did, you knew. I mean, plus she had just all the harmonic, wherewithal. She knew the entire piano and just had all of these tools, but she still only used it here and there. So I will only, kind of scat here and there, and I love it, but it is not what I would consider my real kind of core to who I am. But there are so many singers now. I love listening to Kurt Elling and when he scats and others. But so thank you. You're hearing me do it on the few occasions where I feel that I can do that well enough that you might enjoy it.
You were great. I think you're underestimating yourself. So everyone in this audience, don't listen to her. She's fantastic. And when we get to hear her sing scat, we'll take it as the gift that it is that she's giving us. So one thing I did want to touch on before we start talking about the great Jazz House Kids is what prompted you to actually do that was you had your voice affected by a very serious allergy, and you actually lost your voice for a time. Would you mind sharing about that?
Yeah. Actually, I think there have been 2 occasions where I've had 2 serious bouts with my voice, which in general, I think of my voice as I would say just fairly hardy, that I can, um, sing day after day. I can, it, it has resonance. It can sing to the back of the room, um, and, you begin to maybe think of it as invincible that way. But on two occasions, I had a problem on the, um, one of the occasions I had a ruptured vocal cord that came from uh, I an allergy that I had that I just didn't realize that it had moved into such a case that it was weakening the vocal cord. Um, and when you can't sing, and for, in this instance, close to a year, um, it really makes you reevaluate, your life, and it kind of flashes before you. Not only couldn't I sing, I couldn't speak. I could not be heard. Matter of fact, it occurred when we were getting married in 2005. And, if somebody wasn't sitting, like literally, I was at their ear, I couldn't be heard. And so that was one occasion, and I did a, you know, I couldn't speak for quite a considerable period of time. I did acupuncture, and it would come back. It would come back for about 10 minutes. You could actually hear me if I was this far away, from my screen. And I would call my mother, who lived in Canada. And those were the days I would go to my acupuncturist, I'd call her up, and we would talk for 5-7 minutes, and then it would fade away. And I was never sure when it would come back. And then it happened on another occasion as well. And I think for singers, who already, singing is coming from a magical place, right? You don't, it's not like, you're not hitting down on the keys. You just don't know where you will be at any given day, right? You can do many things to try to, what you drink and what you eat and how much sleep you get and things like that. But, you just can't say, yeah, I'll take a Consomer today, or I'll take that Steinway, and think that that's what you're going to have each and every day. And so singers are very much at the mercy, in a way, and other, instrumentalists are not quite in that way. And when you lose your ability to communicate and to sing, I just wasn't sure when it would ever come back. And it was it was a really tough time. And Christian did his best to keep my spirits up, because it just felt so bleak. You can't even be heard on the phone. First of all, you're not supposed to be talking at all. So those were difficult times. But one day I woke up and I knew, before I even spoke, that I was back. And so from time to time, really through the allergy seasons, I have to really work about making sure that the inflammation stays down. And because any of that just affects the vocal cord's ability to close fully and properly. And then when you get a weakening of that, then you can't produce the sound, and let alone hold tone. So those have been kind of challenging experiences, as many singers do. So you really do try to take care of your instrument. And when they say, don't speak, and because whispering is the worst thing to do as a singer. And what many of us think, well, I'll just whisper, and that'll make it better. Well, actually, that doesn't help either, and actually irritates the voice even further. So, singers really do need to take care of their voice. It's an instrument.
Thank you for sharing about that. I very much appreciate it. I wanted to ask if you found that from those travails, if you have found the tone of your voice has changed dramatically from earlier in your career to me, I was listening to some tracks off your May I Feel CD that you recorded in 1998. And when I listen to things that are in the 2000s and after you're dealing with your vocal cord issues, your voice seems much more deeper and richer, but you still have an incredible range. I'm amazed by the breadth of your range. Do you feel a difference, and do you find that you're able to hit notes that you never did, or can hit notes that you used to?
Yeah, it's always interesting. I hear that from sometimes Christian when he comes back after singing, playing with singers, like, oh, they're still singing in the same key. When did Frank Sinatra have to change his key? Did Ella Fitzgerald always sing in her key? There's clearly, there are a few areas over the years during this period of time where clearly I just had to really stay clear of kind of middle to top range. And when it transitions over, I couldn't make that smooth transition as I had done. It's interesting. Now I would say my voice is fully back, but I have really gone through ups and downs with my voice in my professional career here and there, and I've had to make accommodations for that. But this year, and I think it's really because I have found some elements with diet and that really deal with inflammation largely, and I've gone to some specialists about that. With those changes, I've moved my voice into a different place, and I've regained. See, I don't think I've regained. If you can have the tone and keep the core, and if the core can support the sound, but I have regained those top notes. And so that's been something that I've, really feel good about. I also work with a really tremendous singer as an instructor who has worked with singers who've had vocal issues over the time, and her name is Kate Baker, and she is a professor at the New School, and I think she's magical. She truly understands the singer and the vocal mechanism, and she really has the strangest routine that I go through, as most singers do, but I have been able to really manage my voice and sound in a way that, I feel like I finally found that place. And so just over the years, I just had to kind of work through it. And I can listen to it and I know what challenge I was dealing with at that time. May I feel I was completely free. And some of those earlier records, I was completely free. And I feel back to being free.
That's great to know, and I'm happy to hear that. You have such a beautiful speaking voice too. I'm a huge proponent of audiobooks and oral storytelling, and I think that growing up with it in my school, or the librarian used to read to us as kids, and occasionally family members would, and I just love audiobooks, and so you have the perfect voice for audiobooks. And it's funny, the very first one I ever listened to was Toni Morrison, who also has this very beautiful, deep, velvety voice like Maya Angelou too. And it was so, I was not accustomed to listening to an audiobook, and I was driving to Washington, D.C. And I basically was so lulled into this wonderful life of her voice that I missed my exit. And then I was on the Beltway for about an hour and a half trying to figure out how to get off of it. And one of the things I did want to mention is, this is another hat before we segue over to Jazz House Kids, and this is from an article that was sent to me, is Melissa sought after voiceover and imaging voice talent, working with entertainment, corporate, and nonprofit clients. Recently, she provided song for the Empire State Building's new observatory MP3 audio tour, hosted Journey with Jazz at Lincoln Center, and was the voice of Miss Lightning in the Nickelodeon pilot swoosh. And I think this is fantastic. So if you ever decide that I'm tired of the bandstand, I want to just pursue audiobooks is wide open for you. It sounds like television. Anything you want to do, you can accomplish. You've got my backing.
That was, thank you so much. I've always loved the voiceovers and doing the commercials and the Swish Kids. I really wish they had picked that up because I just couldn't wait to be Miss Lightning. And so, yeah, thanks for bringing me down that lane.
So let's talk about Jazz House Kids. So as you had mentioned in many articles and also tonight is the fact that the issues with your vocal cords, you were seeking out another way of another avenue to share. And you were asked to come into BGO to do a one-time workshop with kids. And in all the interviews that I've seen, you said it was a wonderful yet horrifying prospect to you. And somehow you found great joy. And out of that, like a phoenix, came Jazz House Kids. So could you please tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's really true. The wonderful NEA jazz master Dorothon Kirk and Gary Walker had, 20 years ago, because Jazz House is now almost 20, asked if I would do this program for them. They had this Saturday program, I think once a month or something for kids. Matter of fact, you couldn't go as an adult, you had to bring a kid. And it was, I was so excited. I said, great, I'm going to get my band and we'll do a great concert. And about a week before, they said, well, we don't just want a concert. We'd like you to do a program. I was like, well, what's a program? And they said, tell them something. We want them to learn something about jazz. And I said, tell me the ages again. And he said, well, it'll be kids, probably like 2 years old to 12, 14 years old and their parents. I thought that sounded awful. I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to do something for 2-year-olds to 12-year-olds and their parents. So this is really the truth. I've said this. So the week of right before I was to go, it was a Saturday, I decided I had laryngitis. Oh my gosh, I had laryngitis. So one day I called Gary. I said, Gary, guys, he was like, you don't have laryngitis. You'll be fine. The next day, oh, Gary, I think I got a cold. I tried so hard to get out of this program. And they just wouldn't have it.
It sounds like destiny was knocking and you were not opening that door.
I was not opening that door. It didn't matter that I was recording or I was performing. This notion of kind of doing something on stage other than singing just was terrifying into this audience. And I just didn't want to let them down. So, the mother of invention is a great challenge. And so I really just had to buckle down and I said, okay, then, what do I want to say? And I think the thing that early on, as a young singer and starting to tour around the world and meet people from different cultures and backgrounds, yet come on stage and we, could have just make music together. I really decided that that's kind of what I wanted to share with people is this building this jazz house and how do you build this jazz house and so without knowing I decided that we would all just build a jazz house that day. And I thought, well, okay, if we're going to build a jazz house, we're going to need a tool belt. We're going to need some tools. And I then said, okay, well, you know what? I'll tell them that underneath their seat, go grab that tool belt and let's fill that tool belt with all the things we need. And let's start with listening. Like, maybe I can get them to stop talking or something. Let's start with listening and let's start with rhythm. And we started adding these tools into our tool belt. And I told them we're going to build a jazz house today. And we went on and we just started through the foundation and working with the drummer and the bass player, and filling it with color with the piano and 88 keys, and then beginning to kind of tell the story. And I had this great band, like fantastic, ensemble, and we built the jazz house. And at the end, at the end, my picture that I still have in my office, I'm holding a 2-year-old. I've got 50 kids behind me. We're going in a circle singing some music. I took a piece from Oscar Brown Jr. and I changed the lyric to it, and that became Let's Build a Jazz House. And at the end, there was a gentleman there taking photographs, and he said, well, I'm the director of visual and performing arts in Newark, at Newark Public Schools, and I really love that program you did. And and he had a name for it, and he said, I'd like you to come in and do that assembly program. And I said, well, that was an assembly program. We just did it today. He goes, no, that was an assembly program. And so I went into schools and I started to do that program, and really kind of fell in love with bringing this music, this American music, this Black American art form, to young people in this great city of jazz in Newark. And, Gary will laugh every time, here and there I'll say, Gary, look what you've done. And he'll say, look, I just asked you to do one program. I didn't say go spend 20 years building a jazz house. But it has become my life's work. And I think at different periods with my voice, it allowed me to have that place, Patty, as you've said, to really find another creative outlet. And also, music is a really giving aspect of our life, to give, to share music. And so it just gave me a way to share, and it's become my life's work. And to now see it being played forward by young people who are now at the organization, giving it back to young people. I guess I'm really glad I had that day and built that jazz house.
And glad you opened that door to Destiny, because honestly, you just never know where it's going to lead. And it's just an incredible program. I'm a huge supporter of it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And one of the things that it brings to mind, too, is you're filling a need in our school system, which unfortunately, more and more schools are sacrificing the arts and music for whatever reasons. They may call it financial. I don't understand. And I think it's a well-known fact, and I'm going to get off my soapbox pretty soon, I promise everybody. But it's
I'm coming right there.
Come up on my soapbox with me. So the fact that music is something that greatly helps in mathematics. It's just a known fact. And so why would you ever consider cutting music out of a school program? It still baffles me. So the fact that you not only saw a need, but you created something to fill that need, and you have grown it to be open to anybody who is interested in coming. There's no financial obligation. Am I correct in that?
What we do is
turn anyone away.
Yeah, we give all the programming to schools that we go into. At the Jazz House, which is located in Montclair, New Jersey. There's a fee for families who can pay, and it's a sliding scale for others. And if a family needs that support and cannot make that, then the door has never been closed on anyone, and that's keeping the door swinging wide open for 19 years has certainly been a journey. But we're a richer community because of the voices and the stories that have been told, and the community that we have. I mean, Jazz House really is it's an instrument for change. And it's that place where we're gonna make sure and swing the doors open to make sure there's access. And for us, that means if that's a lesson, if that's an instrument, if that's putting in a program, we put in a program in Patterson at a school there, the Frank Lautenberg School. There wasn't a music program at that school for close to a decade. So if putting a program in place, an instrument that's needed, lessons, tuition assistance, that's access. And then, the learning is what we do on the bandstand, and the peer-to-peer engagement that happens, and the mentorship with faculty. Like this music, it's a folk music, so it really, I think the instructors really see themselves in that very authentic manner of jazz, which is passing it down, and then you pass it on. And then we're there to do career development. And so as young people now graduate and go on to college, which if you're studying at the Jazz House, virtually 100% of young people are going on for higher studies. Then we're going to bring you back as a teaching assistant or as an intern. There are 3 members of our core staff that started when they were in 7th grade. They're now part of our administrative staff. The faculty and administrators write countless letters of reference and support. You name it. That's that career development piece of it. And then the last piece is doing what jazz does, bringing community together. And so we're very serious about being in the community. I just got back today from doing what we call a giglet. And so if you're professionally going a gig, if you're, these had some young professionals, so it was a gig. But if you are, emerging musician in junior high and high school, we call it a giglet. They get paid and they learn that craft of playing on the bandstand. And we do something like 60 to 80 giglets a year. And then our largest convening is the Montclair Jazz Festival that we produce every summer. And so that last year attracted close to 30,000 people. So, that's our mission, to be an instrument for change through access, learning, career development, and community building.
I'm so excited by your program and all that you're offering. And one of the things that we are trying to instill here at the Wayne Public Library is to not only enhance our jazz concert series, but one of the things we're working very hard to implement is to work with student musicians from William Patterson's jazz program. And I would like to try to coordinate with Jazz House Kids and have our library be a way and a location for the students to get experience and the patrons to hear some great music from some fantastic up and coming musicians. I have been very passionate about this, and I think we're finally at a point now that we're past pandemic. I hope, fingers crossed, that we can actually implement this and just get it onto a regular presentation between William Patterson and Jazz House Kids to have some great jazz here from these students. I'm happy to also say that with our current jazz concert series, we were able to have one of your alumni perform, Kalen Cardello. How old was he when he started at Jazz House Kids?
He came at 9 or 11. He was either 9 or 11. And look, he had a tremendous music teacher, tremendous playing classical. We knew he was very serious-minded when he came. We have had a number of really talented pianists, and Kalen is that, we took Kalen to the Middle East in this past December and went on tour. We took him along with another alumni. Right there in your own backyard, William Patterson is a tremendous school. Many, many of our students have gone to that institution. And I like to say, when they graduate, they're great on and off the stage, right? They are great citizens. They are well-educated. They are prepared. They know how to, solve problems. And really that ability to be on stage and off. We hire many, many young people from William Patterson, and we, of course, put a lot of them to work who are on stage. And right now we've got I mean, just today, Kaylin was at the Jazz House, and along with Patrick Gannon and some of the other students, and they just they're a part of this community, and it's a tight knit, and you know you just look under the leadership of Dr. Dave Dempsey for all of these years, and the great musicians that he has had. From Mulgrew Miller and Uncle James and now has been, that's a school that understands how to deliver an authentic jazz education. But they also really really foster mature young people. So but we would love to be a part of it, bring some of our younger musicians, and let them play for your community, and you'll just be astounded. I mean, you would have, listening to Kaylin at 9 or 11 years old, you just saw this maturity, and now you see him and with a career. And as I said, watching him on the road, how he negotiates on the road, and different culture and language, and the respect that he lent, his preparedness. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think are happening when you are training a jazz musician. All of those elements, right? The right and the left brain. It is, they have to problem solve, right? They have to negotiate those chords and make something out of that music every single day. And when you do that, and when you work on that muscle, I think jazz musicians are poised, young people are poised for this time like no one else, because their entire aesthetic genre that they are in is about a changing environment. And most of us really resist change, Patty, right? I mean, moving from your house, or a new job, or maybe getting a divorce or losing a spouse, constant change. We struggle with that. But a jazz musician, that's their playground, right? That's their sandbox. And so that really means when these young people then go into cyber technology, or go to law school, or go to become an architect, and these are all fields that I have a name for every one of those fields in our community. They're just ready to handle a set of circumstances that are tough, that require deep work. And a jazz musician takes deep work, right? And so I think that's why you see so many musicians, jazz musicians, and people are so affected by their poise, by their maturity on and off the stage, because to get there, they had to do some real deep, spend a lot of time to get on stage. And I'll tell you just one story. One of our early programs, we had Pat Metheny came and did a program. It was called Inside the Jazz Note. We used to do a master class for young people before an evening concert and conversation. And all these years later, I think this was just such a great articulation of what I'm talking about. And he said, look, I think you should play all kinds of music. And he said, I encourage everybody to explore a lot of different genres, and don't settle in one area, but explore them all. He said, but I'm going to tell you, if you want to just, you're in Brazil, he said, and you're in Rio, and you just want to go and get a Coke at the, local store, pick something. He said, I can give you 4 bars. I can get you 4 bars, and I can get you down and back, and we're good. He said, but if you want to explore Rio and the people and the food and the culture and the beaches and their greatest, just attributes of that city, he said, you're going to need a lot more in that tool belt. And he said, that's a jazz musician. And he said, so you can go anywhere you want, but if you want to take this music up, That's what you're going to have to put in that time. And he was talking about learning the language. So that's a different level of commitment to get yourself around the corner so you can get the soft drink than it is to get yourself around a city so you can understand the people and their culture. And I do think that is why young people who are in this music and commit to learning this music are so well prepared for today.
You remind me so much when you're talking about a musician like Chick Corea, who, of course, we lost far too soon and last year. And I had the pleasure of seeing him at the Morristown Performing Arts Center and performing with Bella Fleck, who was a bluegrass player, and he would pair himself with so many different artists from so many different genres, and
Yeah.
it really was an amazing thing to see him just and his joy, his just truly the joie de vivre. He exuded life and positivity, and he could. I think if one word, if I had to describe Chick Corea in one word, it would just be explore, right? And just find out exactly what you're just saying. Find out what's out there. Look at the bigger picture and assimilate it into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I also wanted to mention that you have on one of your teaching artists is also a graduate of the William Patterson program, is Abel Morales, who will be performing here. I'm doing a collaborative concert series with Laurelwood Arboretum in August, so he's going to be performing on the 17th. And so it's just wonderful. You're making my job very easy of finding musicians where I just have to look around me. and it's a way for us to highlight and also champion and get out there this talent and have they're our next generation. They're the ones who are going to bring jazz to the next level and forward. And this is what we have to nurture. I just
love that. Just Abel. I mean, that this community that we're in, right? That Abel is one of our faculty. He led the program that we did that I was mentioning at Senator Frank Lautenberg School, and led this program of novice musicians getting their instrument for the very first time and going into a concert and doing everything, from hot cross buns to to Monk in after 5 months. He's a tremendous educator and player. And I think he, is a musician that is bringing in his cultural roots. He's Mexican, and bringing that his cultural roots to this music, which this is what great musicians do. And, so your audience is in for a great treat as he brings these traditional Mexican pieces with a jazz aesthetic and these jazz pieces, and he brings them to his cultural roots. And he's again just one of these very talented, smart. That's the other thing that we should say about musicians. They're smart. It takes a lot of work to be to dig into this music like that. And so he's smart. He's giving, he's really kind, he's kind on stage and off. So that's great. Great. It's really great. I didn't know we had so much in common.
So thank you for lobbing that one to me about being smart, because now I want to mention about how smart you are and that you attended and graduated from Brown University. You were going to pursue a law degree, and then when you moved down to DC, this is where you decided to make your passion your focus. And then you also have attended several leadership programs at the Rutgers Business School, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, well, I mean, look, I was, I thought of music as just a vocation, of something that I loved. I wanted to, I was serious about it, but I never thought of a musical career. I certainly never heard of arts administration. And as much as we were going to ballet and opera and funk concerts and just a lot of things in the arts, I had a family, who kind of said, you go to school and well, my father was a professional football player. So I did have, you know, I saw people kind of make a little left turn, and then he went on and got his doctorate, you know. So when I just thought I would be a lawyer, I really wanted to be a defense attorney. I was really interested in criminal law. But I just kept immersing myself more and more in music. And I had my sister, my eldest sister, actually was in DC at the same time I was. After I graduated from Brown, I was working for a corporate firm, Skadden Arps, big, firm. And I was watching lawyers, and I was working really hard and many, many hours as a paralegal. And my sister was getting her law degree, but she needed a little bit of a social time, I think. And so she would make me go to all of these jam sessions, and she would push me out there to these jam sessions. Of course, now I'll tell you I had laryngitis as well, because basically it's just fear. And so more and more I got immersed in the community in Washington, D.C., and I applied to law school, and I was planning to go. I deferred a couple of times, and after about, my getting ready for my third and final, I called my mother and I broke the news that I wanted to be a jazz singer. And she, really just said, I think she had concerns like a lot of parents about how are you going to make a living for yourself, and will you stay safe, and and all the different other travails that one can think of. But really what she said is, you've got to do what you're going to invest everything you've got in. And if you're going to invest everything, then you're going to make it. And if you're willing to do and make that investment, then I'm going to stand by you. And that then became a journey wherever I was performing. And she met me in many places around the world to see my performances. But having her in my corner, my father died when I was very young, but to have her in my corner, knowing that that I had that support, and that really brings me again back to the Jazz House, about what it means for young people to be on a trajectory for long-term success. It's about that support. And I had it with her and many mentors through the years. And I know that's we didn't just get here by ourselves. And so I didn't look back. And I have just kind of kept going, and I love the law. I love I love having lawyers on my board and within our community. I'm glad I made this choice. It's not been a straight path as such, and you had to figure it out. And I think that's also another element of being a musician and an artist, right? Like, you want to be a painter, an actor, or you want to do these things. You've just got to go in there. You've got to just give it everything you have, and you will find a way, and you will find the balance that allows you to be a creative person in the arts. And so I feel it's important that we don't discourage young people from becoming artists. And I think too much pressure is put on them that that's not a valid path, one's art. And I think it is, when our students were recently at essentially Ellington, the largest, I think one of the largest competitions for big band in the nation, and we were one of 15 bands this year. And a young man came up and asked him the question, said, I'm contemplating going to music school, and I'm wondering, and he basically said, well, if you're contemplating, then you shouldn't go. I think what he was saying is, you've got to know that you will give it everything you got, period, stop. Because when you have that kind of commitment, then you will find your way. And I watch and see so many musicians who are our faculty, and they make a living teaching, writing, arranging, playing for churches, going on the road, being in, writing for film, in it, on a TV program, on Broadway. However, and I bet none of them would say that the way they make their life today is how they thought it would be. But what they knew was they were going to make a life in music. And I think it's really important that we allow in our country a field called an artist. And one can stand up and say, I am an artist. And there is beauty in that. And I would say in our deepest and troubled times, we don't look to the politicians, we look to the artists to speak in a way of a depth and to our hopes and dreams for the future. So I revere them very much because they have had to find a way in a country that doesn't do all it can. It spends very little of its GDP on art and culture compared to other nations. So I am one of those advocates that say, and that's why our students in our summer program, it says artist right on the sleeve. And one year we forgot artist, and man, did we hear about it, because we want them to be able to say bold and with a clear clarion cry, I am an artist. And I want to be respected as an artist in the same manner as we respect people who have other fields that they are a part of that make up our world.
It's amazing. What is the message that we're sending to kids in schools, regardless of what city and what state they're from? If you're telling kids, we're taking away your music and your art programs. And basically, for you to get to college, you have to be involved in 15 zillion different extracurricular activities. Otherwise, you're not going to get into the college of your choice. And the pressure that is put onto these kids that they have to succeed and excel and be fitting into a mold that doesn't even include the arts or music. I'm on my soapbox again. I'm so sorry about this. But
I just got off mine.
It just annoys me that the message we're giving kids is, and this is why I understand when that young man said, I'm contemplating, because I think for him to give it contemplation was probably a big act of revolt and rebellion against maybe his parents and maybe what was expected of him. And I don't think kids are allowed to make that choice anymore, that they're forced into having to push and excel. And I'm going to get off my soapbox now, so sorry.
I just think, Patty, look, we look to adults to help us negotiate and to help us shore up, and to encourage us, not false encouragement. We don't need a bunch of parents, quite frankly, saying, my child's incredible, he's Picasso over here. That's not helpful. No, we're not all Picassos. But I think what we're both getting to is that it is hard for a young person to pick going into the arts when when the people around them who they respect and are closest to them to provide that guidance don't find that a valid field. And, I have a friend of mine's daughter is a very talented visual artist and a painter. And, like this young man, she was really struggling with, I think I'm going to be a veterinarian. I'm going to do this and I'm going to go in all these fields. And one day the parents came to her and said, we think you should consider being an artist. Have you thought about being an artist? Of course she thought about being an artist. She's an artist. She is an artist. But when they opened that door for her to see herself there, so today her art, is now going all around the world, and she has the support of her family, which allowed her to make this decision. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's really important that we as a society value our artists, and on equal footing that we do other fields, and that we allow students. And the other reality is, if they find at some point that that isn't where they're going to really do all that it takes, they will make a course correction.
I know we're over time. There's one more point I wanted to bring up, if you could spare 5 more minutes, is about women in jazz and chica power. And as a little opening to talking about that, I had the opportunity to talk with Rini Rosnes about her international supergroup that is all women called Artemis. And then also I noticed that coming up this summer at the Music Mountain Summer Festival in Connecticut, there is another a sister group called Five Play, who are performing there as well. So it's nice to see more of these women groups. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts are about how do we foster more girls to get interested in jazz? How do we build that? Obviously, Chica Power, which I'd like you to talk about, is a big part of that. And do you see that women will eventually have an equal or closer equal footing to men? There's a big question for you. Go.
Well, it's imperative that we open the doors and have them swinging wide open for girls and for women. I mean, if you look in band rooms today, in most of our classrooms, 50% or more are girls, right? But when we look in the jazz band, not so much. And so we've learned over the last, number of years, and that even though we have pioneers and women who have been a part of this, and I don't mean vocalists. I'm talking much more in terms of instrumentalists. That really what it takes is, for young people to see themselves. I mean, we need to see themselves. That's what's called a role model, right? And so when you look out today, even in jazz, Chica Power, which started about 10 years ago now, it started with a young woman. Her name is Zoe Abadia, and she came to the Jazz House, was one of our top students on an alto. She just graduated from Juilliard with her master's in music. And one day I asked her, how was her experience in our big band? And she was in our top ensemble. And I thought, I'm going to hear something about how just the experience of the band, and without missing a beat. So he said, well, I really wish there were more girls here. Well, there was only one girl in the band. And I looked around and sure enough, we had more chaperones who were females than we had in the band. And we then really said, well, let's study why this is. Why is it if in the orchestra, in band, but in jazz band, what is it? Well, we found out that it's a lot more than access, right? Oftentimes we think it is about access. You don't have access to a band, but that really wasn't what it was. And this comes straight from 10 years of hearing from young women. It really was about, well, I didn't see myself in that band. I didn't see myself in the players that we all revered, in the repertoire, in the instructors. I sure didn't see it in when I looked around in terms of that there were only men and boys in the band room. But it was also about the music itself. The music demands of a musician something that we do not foster in an equal footing as with boys. And that means you've got to lean in, and you've got to do what we call at Chica Power is rise and improvise. So first of all, we thought it was all about access. So let's open the doors. Okay. We opened the doors and, well, where are you guys? Okay. It was more than that. Then it was about role models. right? And having role models and being conscious of that and bringing Renee Rodgers, Ingrid Jensen, Nat Cohen, and Camille Thurman, and so many others. But then it was something else as well. This is that deeper level, and that's about how do girls feel when they now need to stand up and be the center of attention and take a solo? Is that a masculine event? How do I feel about that? At a time where where girls are suffering from a dip in self-confidence, some 40%, in the prime, right, from 10 to 14. So I am facing a self-confidence dip that boys are not suffering from. And now I need to stand up and I need to emote, right? And how will I be? How will I be perceived? There were all these things that are at the core. If I don't do well, am I standing up for all girls? Right? Did I just fail for all girls? All of these things were coming up and have come up over and over for Chica Power. So Chica Power became this place where we began to really tackle these issues. So we're going to tackle them where you will have role models around, where you will be able to see yourself, where the women on stage will come and talk to you about their experience. And we will also give you a safe space for you to practice, for you to learn, for you to practice and try that solo, for you to play and get ready for a jam session. So when you go to that jam session, regardless if there's lots of girls or not, that you're ready because you were able to figure it out and work for it. So when we put all of these things around the young people, we began to find something very interesting. And what we found was that girls began to lead. They didn't just play in the band, they are leaders now. And they are stepping forward and they're bringing their sisters with them. And then we found something else. We found out that our community around us, that the boys, that the men valued their participation. And matter of fact, when they go in now, and if they happen to be in a class and there's no girls or one, there's very few of those that probably exist now, they'll say, where's Chica Power? Because there is an expectation that they are going to share the stage with girls and with their female counterparts. And so it has been a really incredible experience that has taken us on a journey of exploration to really understand, and by listening to the voices of women, young women, and now they're playing it forward. And so the women from Sheila E. to, the women that I've mentioned who come back to Jazz House, who mentor these women. And now Zoe is back and she is teaching at the Jazz House. So she is what she needed for someone else. That's playing it forward. That's how you're an instrument change, and that's how you make a difference. And that's the environment. And you are seeing more females on the bandstand today than ever before. And I think there will come a time, and I think it's around the corner, where we won't be having this same conversation, because there won't be a band room where there are not. There won't be a time where you don't see an orchestra leader or you don't see a director who is a female. But it has taken that journey. But I will tell you, it takes a real serious commitment. It takes women being within this and deliberate and willing to step forward and to be a part of this community. It takes men moving over, and if they're not, women are just bumping them over, but it takes all of us together. And I think we're really there, and you're seeing it in college programs. You're seeing it because young women have a story to tell. They love this music just like anybody else. And but it's been interesting. It has been an interesting journey, and one that I am really proud that we're a part of. And you know, we have grown the number of women in the program over 250% over time. And so when Zoe and other young talented artists come back and they look around and see all the girls, and now those young girls they're not coming in with that same experience, right? It's like it's just a great day for that. That does not mean I'm not Pollyannish that the world is perfect, but that's what change looks like. That's what it looks like. That's what I think authentic change looks like. You have to understand the root cause, and sometimes it's not what we think it is. And so it was emotional, it was social, as well as it was, you know, from an access and other elements. It was all of that deeply rooted, and I think more and more programs are unpacking it.
I am so glad I asked that question because I did not expect that answer, and thank you for going so in depth about that. Anyway, I know we're way over time, and I just very much want to thank you for taking the time here. I want to make a few announcements before I wrap this up here. Jazz House Kids is a sponsor of the Montclair Jazz Festival, and they're entering into their 13th annual year, and it's going to be taking place in July. The sound check concerts are going to be Wednesday, July 13th and 27th from 6 to 9. There are rain dates. The Block Party and DJ Brother Mister is Saturday, August 13th with a rain date from 12 noon to 10 p.m. And for those of you who don't know, DJ Brother Mister is Christian McBride. And Downtown Jamboree is Saturday, September 10th from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. The William Patterson Jazz Room Series is also, the summer series is going to be starting. It's the week of July 18th through the 22nd. So July is just chock full of great jazz everywhere. And here at the Wayne Public Library next week on Thursday, we have a wonderful trio performing of Lawrence Hobgood, who toured for many years with Kurt Elling, who you mentioned, and James Robinson and Carol Latham. So, and in August, we're going to have the Martin Pizzarelli Quartet also perform here. So it's an exciting time for jazz, and let's try to get the word out to everybody. Melissa, thank you so much for taking the time to not only just have a wonderful conversation with me, but to educate me and to educate all of us on the importance of what we need to do for these next generations.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Patty. This has been wonderful. Thank you for allowing me a moment to kind of reflect on kind of this journey and what we're doing, and great work in your concert series, and hats off to Wayne Public Library for you know, supporting this cultural program and live and virtual. So it's been a pleasure, and to all of your fans, thank you so very much. This has been really a wonderful evening.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting you at some time in person soon. So thanks everybody for coming in tonight. And again, thank you, Melissa. Everybody have a great night.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Bye.